Welcome to Redditors. Please hit the like button. Let's get on with the video.
What was your biggest no going back now moment? Canoeing over a waterfall. I hopped a freight train once, and the moment it hits 15-20 miles per hour, you're just along for the ride. But the real no going back moment came when the train stopped on a siding outside Winnemucca. After waiting there for like 5 hours, I decided to walk into town and get some ice cream sandwiches. As soon as I got 50 yards from the train, I realized, if it starts rolling now, I'll be too far away to chase it down. I'll just be stuck in this town for a while. Mountain biking with some friends on a new trail, which wasn't even a bike trail. We hiked most of the way up since it was too steep to ride up, carried our bikes all the way up, rested at the top for a bit and then rolled over the edge. I remember as my front tire crested and gravity started taking over, I thought, there's no way I'm stopping now, unless a tree stops me. Parachute jump. My life is now no longer in my hands. Oh well, Geronimo. First time I went skydiving was a tandem jump and the guy told me on the ground once we get in the door we'll rock back and forth 3 times. On the 3rd time forward just roll out the door. So, he being the trusting sort thought that was a solid plan. We get up to altitude, open the door. I put my feet on the little platform and cross my arms just like he told me to. The F-air rocked back once and pushed us out the door immediately. My only thought was that wasn't 3. Oh F. We're falling. When I was younger, letting my older cousin talk me into a canoe ride down a flooded river. We'd planned it days in advance but there was a lot of heavy rain in the area and the normally calm river was near flood level and quite rough. I really didn't want to do it but I didn't want to let him down either so I still went. I knew as soon as we saw the river this was a terrible idea. The whole thing was a show and I honestly though we were going to die. We had no control and at one point we got stuck nose down and a large rock. Knowing if we tipped out we were drowning, we somehow made it out into the shore where we walked back with the canoe. When I asked my crush if she is ready for a relationship with me, the 2 hours I waited for a reply took forever. Also sadly she said no. Getting in the ambulance after suffering a grand mal seizure from alcohol withdrawals. When I finally said enough is enough and decided I needed to quit drinking before it killed me, I thought I could detox on my own as I was terrified of hospitals. I was wrong. I spent a week detoxing in the ICU, and now, almost a full year later, I'm still very happily sober and I'm completely thriving. I've witnessed 2 friends cease from alcohol withdrawals. It's crazy. One of my friends fell back into alcohol and nearly died from liver failure. Through some sort of a miracle he survived and is doing well. I can remember having what was supposed to be our last conversation on the phone. He wasn't supposed to make it through the weekend. Good job. I'm happy for you. That first time being dropped off on the Appalachian Trail several states away from home and watching the car speed off into the distance with nothing by my own legs and a stick I found to get me back. I love that stick. Stepping off that sandbar I could barely reach to swim out to the girl caught in a riptide and not knowing how a riptide worked. It took what felt like hours but, spoiler alert, we made it. Too early in the season for lifeguards. I remember calling out to people walking their dogs on the beach but we were so far out they didn't even look towards us. The positive pregnancy test, we were trying. But seeing the test my first thought was honestly, oh what have we done? He's now 8 months old and it is the best, but still the scariest, decision we ever made. Oh, this feeling. I remember sitting on the toilet, staring at the positive in the window on that test. I leaned my head against the wall and closed my eyes, and the room still spun and spun. It was the most complete sense of, well, this is what you wanted. Now what? The knowledge that nothing in life would ever be the same. I ended up miscarrying that pregnancy, and 2 subsequent more. No other pregnancy test carries the same weight for me as that initial one. It was like I'd walked through a door into an entirely new wing of life. My kid is 14 now. She's amazing. It was all worth it. When I was about to get on the plane to my first semester of med school, my dad, never one for sentiment, said well, you're now actually worth more dead than alive. Don't screw this up. The feeling when the plane takes off, knowing there's no turning back, it all depends on you. A scary feeling that is. Here, try this hot wing. Took a bite and for the next 18 hours, I could only focus on how this was a crime against humanity. And for those now asking, it was the last dab XXX on a drumstick. It was coated all over. I just ate one big bite, and then I went and shoved my head under a cold shower. Then, it was bed and bathroom for several hours as I threw up most of it, but some got digested. I knew going it that it was gonna be hot. My former roommate was a hot sauce aficionado. He never once handed me a wing that was less than a habanero sauce. The question was, am I about to have Ghost, Pepper X, Carolina Reaper, habanero, etc. The next day was a crime against lavatories. I made a budget yesterday to figure out how much I'd need to move out. If I work 2 more hours than planned at a starter job I've lined up, I could do it easily, with all the optional expenses. That's when it hit me that I'm not in college anymore and I actually could have the money to live independently. One piece of advice: build up some savings before you move out, like 3-6 months of rent savings. A bit dark, but when I took a bunch of pills in a suicide attempt, it was around 10 PM on a Tuesday night and I had just gotten into an argument with my mom. I laid down in my bed and thought about my life. Considered asking my mom to take me to the hospital, but decided against it. I thought, welp, this is it, I'm dying. Then I fell asleep. I took more than the lethal dose of Seroquel XR but somehow woke up in the morning, slow, but perfectly fine. I consider it a glitch in the matrix, but one I am grateful for. This was in August 2019, and I'm doing a lot better now. Still struggling, but not suicidal. Psychedelics, particularly DMT, because it all happened so quickly and intensely. Salvia, never again, only lasts 5 minutes, but holy sh does it feel like an eternity. It's like your entire reality gets smashed into thousands of pieces and you're desperately trying to piece it back together, or getting thrust into the space between the multiverses and you're trying to figure out which one you belong in again. Having your consciousness merge with a red Solo cup on the dresser is the kind of experience a man needs no more than one of in his life. Walking into a MMA fight and the cage closes behind you. Moving to Europe. For my husband, it was moving home. For me, yeah, nope. But I have a rare disease and American insurance was about to actually kill me. Kept denying medications. I was getting worse and worse, and he managed to get an amazing job in a great city to try to save my life. So 5 years ago, we're 2 hours into our flight there, the flight where we're moving forever, and I was too sick to visit first or anything, so I've never seen it before, and I'm realizing I'm not actually well enough to fly back to the US. Who knows when I'll see anything or anyone from again, and this is it. And suddenly, I'm just a bit panicking, gone, like, what is plane? Where is air? The flight attendant was offering me a cup of tea at that almost exact moment and I just stared at my husband, who is a former Marine and has done all of these insane things, and he looked at me and goes, take the tea. I felt like an idiot version of Neo in the Matrix. If you take the tea, the flight keeps going and you see how far this rabbit hole goes. If you don't take the tea, this poor flight attendant stands here looking like a effing idiot for even longer. So anyway, I took the tea from the dude, and then I guess it worked because who can panic while trying to make tea? Turns out it was truly the point of no return. It's been 5 years. The insurance is much better than the US. They've kept me alive when I definitely would have died, but I'm too sick to actually leave. I couldn't even go home for my grandmother's funeral. So, there really was no going back. Unless something kicks in. New treatments etc. I doubt I'll ever see home again. During takeoff on my first ever flight at the age of 30, I have a real intense fear of heights. While motorcycling through Vietnam, it was getting late and I was running low on fuel, too low to turn back to the previous town. If that wasn't bad enough, my bike rack broke. Luckily, kind man and his daughter stopped to help. He knew no English outside of, I can fix. So I followed him. I wore my bags and held the rest in my lap. Entering the town, my jaw dropped. It was complete calamity. The streets were filled with people carrying 2x4s, oxygen bottles, literally hundreds of people. It was like a war zone, with people smashing scooters and cars on fire. People yelling and fighting. A few individuals were running for their lives with mobs intel. I can still vividly see one man's face as he looked over his shoulder in dread. There were too many people to drive through, so I had to slow down to crawl. All I kept thinking was, please don't notice me. Please don't rob me and smash my face in. Please know I'm with this kind man and his daughter. The moment lengthened as a few of the town folk started to notice me. I was scared shitless but produced a warm smile. The smile wasn't returned. The kind man looked back and those who were taking interest in me noticed. Can't help but think it helped. We finally breached the throng of people and pulled down an alleyway to his place. I still didn't feel safe, but I needed gas and my rack fixed. I tried to ask the man why all these people were fighting one another. He just smiled and made the drink gesture. It was during Tet, or the Vietnamese New Year. He fixed my rack, gave me some gas and wouldn't take any money as payment. However, like Christmas, the kids receive money, so I gave his daughter a fat wad of cash. With his blessing, about 45 minutes later I arrived safely at my hostel in Nirvana. When I laid in the bed of my psychiatric hospital's bedroom for the first time, packing up my car before telling my husband I was leaving, I can remember walking away from my ex-wife in the airport. She really thought I couldn't do it. It's been 4 years and I can still remember that feeling, knowing she was behind me now. Yes, sometimes people actually split up in airports. I know it's a cheesy movie cliche. Hiking backcountry snowboarding with a guy. Got stuck in a flat area and needed to hike out in deep powder. It was getting dark and kept coming out of thick trees to 50-foot plus cliff areas. It was getting darker and we didn't have much light left and finally came out to another cliff area with about a 10-foot cliff, 20 feet of landing, and then a second 10-foot cliff area that had a narrow landing to an open glade. It was either go for it and don't fall and get hurt, or start making a snow tunnel and get ready to sleep on the mountain for the night at East Vale Chutes in Colorado. We both made it through the cliff jumps safely, but it was sketchy. When we got to town we both had a couple tall whiskers and the first bar we got to and I was still shaking. Could have possibly died if we had to stay on the mountain overnight or got seriously hurt, and then died. Making the jumps to get to an area we could get down as it was getting dark, but it was either jump or start making a snow shelter. We were definitely not prepared with backcountry gear and got lost in the area, even though we had both ridden it a few times with some experienced people who had taken us down before. Scary and something I will never forget. 5 years ago my dog, Snoopy, passed away and he was my best friend for nearly 17 years, so I wanted a tattoo to remember him. One night after a bit of drinking I had my best human friend roommate draw a caricature of him on my right arm. I'm right-handed, so it was hard for me to draw it myself and I figured that would make it easier. It turned out to be even harder trying to tattoo myself with my left hand, and while slightly drunk, right after I messed up a line really badly, I decided that I might as well keep going at this point since it was not going to look perfect anyway. It came out very sloppy and it's definitely the shittiest tattoo I have, but it is also my most cherished. I don't know if I ever want to get it touched up professionally because I kind of like how it's such a raw expression of emotion. I saw this cute girl and wanted to ask her out. As soon as I said hi to her I knew the only way to get out of it was to ask for her number. She was flattered but said no. This one is quite literally a not going back moment. As a Boy Scout at summer camp we would always take large group hikes on the last day of camp. This particular camp in West Texas was located in the middle of a deep canyon and cut through with a small stream. The day before our hike day it rained a bit but not too much to make us worry. It was drizzling in the morning when we got up, but we were Boy Scouts so that obviously didn't stop us. So our long hike had us cross the small stream up the canyon maybe 10-15 times. No problem. And everything went great. After a while we get to a medium-sized pond that we all decided to go swimming in. That was fun and we all had a blast. We get out and dressed and we keep going farther up a hill to continue our hike. We get to the top and we hear this wonderfully ominous rushing noise. We look over a ledge and see that the water in the stream was moving a bit faster than we remembered. A friend and I volunteer to go back and see what's happened. A flash flood had ripped through the area we had just left moments before. The water in the pond was at least 7 feet higher than it was 5 minutes before, and it was covered in foam and rapidly overflowing. We decided as a group to test our luck and go back to see if we could get out, but the last stream crossing had turned into a very fast moving river crossing. Needless to say, we were effed. We literally couldn't go back, and we had to wait a long time to get help and get to the now almost flooded camp. The other day I tried forcing the garage door closed while inside, cause it had been catching on something. It slid with a loud bang and I noticed the wire had disconnected from the springs. It wasn't going to open. It's like 800 pounds and the springs help carry the load of the door. So unless I got the wire back on the spring I was basically trapped. I found some gloves and sunglasses hanging out in the garage already. Not safety glasses, but better than nothing. And had to essentially hold the spring with one hand, the wire with the other, and do a chest fly to pull it into place. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. When I saw my girlfriend's, now wife, eyes light up at the jewelry store when she laid eyes on what would become the engagement ring, the last 2 months of talking about marriage suddenly felt much more real and serious. Hiking. Knowing that severe weather is on the way, I got about 8 miles and when it started, dense woods but rain was heavy enough that I couldn't see 10 feet in front of me. Crossed a small creek halfway through, which on my way back turned into a river from flash floods. I found a somewhat large rock sticking out from a hill and huddled under that for about 15 minutes while lighting struck close enough to hurt my ears and seriously rumble in my chest. Ended up having to follow the creek upstream until it got small enough to cross, which turned what was originally 2 miles of hiking trail into probably another 8 through raw forest, maybe more as it was pitch black when I got back to my car, and I had started at noon. Spent those hours bawling my eyes out and slipping in muddle mayo. Easily in the top 5 most terrifying experiences in my life.